Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Dayspring Discussions. I'm your host Sean McGahee, and this is a show we talk about movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books. If you geek out about it, we're going to talk about it. You can listen to Dayspring Discussions on iTunes, YouTube, Podomatic, and Patreon, and contact Dayspring Discussions on the Facebook group, Twitter account, and dayspringdiscussions@gmail.com. Happy Tuesday everyone, hope you all are enjoying your week so far, and guys, of course, we're here to talk about one thing and one thing alone, Comic-Con. That's right, the annual San Diego Comic-Con was this weekend, and boy, was it a doozy. A lot of stuff to talk about, guys. Of course, if you've been following me on social media, I've been posting stuff all weekend long. A lot of good stuff to talk about. Today, I want to get to the juicy stuff, so I'm going to start off talking about the Marvel panel. If I get to anything else within my time frame, I'll get to it. Otherwise, honestly, I don't think I will. So I'm going to start off talking Marvel. If I have a chance to get it to anything else, I will, and I'll save it for another show if I don't. So just be prepared for that, guys. So let's just get right into it, of course. Now, Comic-Con, always a good event, always something to look forward to with a lot of good stuff. And there was, that little inclination, knowing that the Marvel panel was going to be on Saturday and that we had not heard any plans from Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios as to what was definitely coming next. Now, the last couple months, even the last year or so, we've heard rumors about stuff that might be in production. We know that they were casting for an Eternals movie. We know that Black Widow has gone in production, but we didn't have set dates for everything. And, rumors were flying. So now we have everything. It's been announced. Everything's set. So I just want to run through the panel, talk about some of the highlights, and let's discuss exactly what's going on next in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Saturday, I was waiting at work all day for the Marvel panel, pretty much all weekend. I had to work all weekend. So I'm sitting there, and anytime we're slow, I would jump on my phone and jump on my websites and social media and Twitter and just see, what's the new update. And I knew the Marvel panel was coming this afternoon. One of my friends on Facebook, Scotty White, who has his own podcast. It's called, it's the Mopcast Network, actually. Go check him out, guys. Anyway, he was telling me that after the Star Trek Picard trailer, which was great, and I'm sure I won't get to it today, I'll talk about it later, but I enjoyed it. He was like, oh, that totally steals Comic-Con, that's great, nothing's going to beat it. And I'm like, wait a second, the Marvel panel is coming. And I knew it was going to be the talk of the town, because it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's this big thing in pop culture. And again, all the films that we know about have come out, and we were waiting for this big announcement. Kevin Feige was going to be there. We knew it was going to be a big deal, and a lot of good stuff came our way, guys. But the most important thing, of course, is that finally we got a slate of what is to come within the next couple years in the MCU. And of course, one of the nice things I'm sure Kevin Feige liked too was it was announced this weekend that Avengers ENDGAME passed Avatar to be the #1 worldwide box office film of all time. So it's like the icing on the cake that was the Marvel Hall H panel over here at Comic-Con. But I'm going to run through kind of, what they've laid out as far as their slate and what they're planning on doing. It's very interesting because if you look at this Phase 4 slate, half of it is on the Disney Plus television network, and half of it is movies up on the big screen. Now, before I get into it, though, I want to talk about the stuff he didn't really announce. Now, at the end, right before he made the big announcement, the big surprise that everyone's been talking about, he did talk about things to come. Of course, people are asking about Black Panther 2, Captain Marvel 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He said those things are in production. He didn't have time to talk about it, of course. D23 is coming up soon. Maybe he has time to talk about it then. I don't know. He did mention, of course, that they are looking at, getting Fantastic Four going, getting X-Men going. People are like, oh, they're going to do Fantastic Four. He said they're in production. I saw these headlines were like, he confirms Fantastic Four. I'm like, yes, he confirmed it. He didn't give any details, he didn't casting. He didn't give story. He didn't give a release date. we all knew Fantastic Four was coming, okay? We know it is coming. That's all he said. So I don't know what people are freaking out about. It was all everything we ever knew. And with that, of course, a lot of stuff that is on this slate is stuff that we knew. We knew we were getting Black Widow, the WandaVision, Loki, the What If. The rumored stuff were really like Doctor Strange and Shang-Chi. We weren't quite exactly sure about that. And then, of course, Thor, Love and Thunder. I'll get to that in just a few minutes. But I want to start at the beginning, of course. Black Widow, May 1st, 2020. It's going to be our next film. It's going to be the next one after Spider-Man Far From Home that just came out. And again, I'm sure they're probably planning another Spider-Man sequel sometime down the road, and we'll get to that. But Black Widow's the next one. It's going to be interesting for this film. Hopefully, or obviously, I don't know which way you want to look at it, it's going to be set in the past. I was under the impression, or I would like this film to take place within that 5-year window between Infinity War and Endgame. I think that's a great place to put the character. As you see Natasha in that time frame, she's kind of trying to hold the world together. In that scene where before she talks to Steve, she's talking to Captain Marvel and War Machine and the people of Wakanda and Rocket. Everyone basically trying to fight off these minor threats after the big threat has already come. Now, Scarlett Johansson talked to Entertainment Weekly and said, quote, "Where we find Natasha in her life at this point is very specific. She really is in a dark place where she's got no one to call and nowhere to go. She's really grappling with her own self. When something huge explodes and all the pieces are landing, you have that moment of stillness where you don't know what to do next. That's the moment she's in. In that moment, you actually have to face yourself." With that quote alone, that seems like a perfect quote to put her in that 5-year gap as far as what she's dealing with. But also, of course, you could go back and, do pre-Iron Man 2 introduction. I could see that, but I think, it fits better to go in that 5-year gap. Also, I think you could also throw in some cameos from, say, Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, possibly too, and Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye, stuff like that. I think would fit in that time frame. We do know, of course, we got Taskmaster as the main villain in this film. We also know David Harbour is going to be a part of it, and of course Rachel Weisz is going to be in there too. So it's a smaller film. It's that spy espionage film, a little bit more low key compared to the spectacle film that Endgame was and Infinity War. And, she's one of those characters that is more grounded, much like the Captain America films were versus, say, a Thor, which is set out, in space with a bunch of aliens and mystical creatures and all that stuff. So it's going to be a much more grounded film in that respect. And, I love Scarlett Johansson. I like the character of Black Widow, and I'm very curious to see what happens. Now, the director, Kate Shortland, I'm not familiar with her. If you look on IMDb, she's got a couple of directing credits. I'm not familiar with any of them, but you know what? Doesn't matter, because Marvel does a great job with not only their casting, but also with the director picks. So I'm not too worried about this film. Scarlett Johansson is Black Widow. I'm always down to see that, so bring it. All right, next up, after that, in fall of 2020, it looks like going to be the first Marvel series, or I wouldn't even call it series really, but anyway, the first thing from Marvel we're going to see on the Disney Plus network is going to be Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie are coming back. Anthony Mackie actually came out on stage with the Captain America shield that was handed off to him by Steve Rogers at the end of Endgame. Sorry for the spoilers, guys, but if you haven't watched Endgame, what the hell are you doing listening to this podcast? You don't belong here. Go somewhere else, okay? But anyway, and they also kind of said that, yes, Falcon is indeed going to have some version of the Captain America outfit where he tries to carry on the shield for Steve, which, goes along with the comic books, of course. Both Bucky and Falcon have at one point taken on the mantle of Captain America when Steve Rogers could not. So with this one, I get the feeling that maybe, Falcon's going to try to take over, and Winter Soldier is going to be, kind of like Bucky, what he was in the comic books, his Batman or his Nightwing or his Robin, or, be his little partner, try to keep him in line, try to help him, advise him, I guess, maybe a little bit. that's what I'm thinking. It's going to be the center of the story, of course, because those two have always had an interesting relationship, going back to, say, Civil War. That's going to be the first thing we're coming with. I think it looks like that'll probably be, on there as soon as Disney Plus launches, maybe, I think. Wait a minute, let me think about this. No, it won't be, because Disney Plus is going to launch this fall, and the show doesn't come out till next fall. So, okay, so maybe it won't be the first thing immediately when Disney Plus launches, but, we're getting Star Wars Mandarin when Disney Plus launches, so I'm okay with that. And the villain for that show, they're bringing back Zemo for that one, which is going to be awesome. They're bringing back the same actor as well. What's his name? Daniel Bruhoff. I know I mispronounced that last name, but anyway, I like Zemo. There's rumors that you might bring back Emily Van Camp as well as Agent 13. Be interesting because, I was hoping to see her in either Infinity War or even Endgame because, they set up that relationship between her and Steve. Obviously, that's changed a little bit since, what happened in Endgame, and I'm fine with it. But, she's a character that has to deal with the ramifications of, the world as well. And I think she would fit in pretty well. All right, coming out next, they're going to have... Hold on, I got to flip my pages here. Eternals, November 6th, 2020. So, guys, to be honest, I don't know a lot about Eternals. I know it's kind of this cosmic thing. These are characters or beings that were created by celestials. They have a cosmic presence to them. I understand that. Beyond that, I don't know. We got Angelina Jolie in there. We got Richard Madden. And we got Kamal Nahaji. Is that how you say his name? The guy from Silicon Valley and Stuber, The Big Sick. Great actor. Great. And then, of course, you got Selma Hayek. The film comes out November 6, 2020. Again, not really knowing a lot about this and what they're doing with it. These are, beings of great power that have lived on Earth for thousands of years. They have that cosmic connection to them. They've been alluded to also in the Guardians of the Galaxy films. So I don't know, actually, what's going on with this film. I know Richard Madden's playing Icarus, who's going to be one of the main characters, which, you know what? I like Richard Madden. I really do. My wife loves his Netflix show, The Bodyguard. I know him from Game of Thrones, of course, and I loved him in the Cinderella film by Kenneth Branagh. But my wife has recently kind of got a little attachment to him because of seeing him on The Bodyguard. So when she saw his name on the cast list, she got a little interested in it. So that's a perk there. But again, Eternals, I don't know it. So I can't get too excited about it from material that I don't know. I like the casting. It's, of course, in the MCU. I'll wait and see about that. I don't have much to say about it, so we'll just have to wait and see how that one goes. But, of course, I have every faith in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to give me something good. All right, so next on the line is Shang-Chi, The Legends of the Ten Rings. So, for those of you not familiar with Shang-Chi, guess what? Neither am I. So, don't feel too bad about it. But Shang-Chi, just kind of a little description about the character. Introduced in 1973, the powerful hero has been a member of groups such as Heroes for Hire, Secret Avengers, and Agents of Atlas. He's skilled in martial arts and able to duplicate himself. So, again, not too familiar with the character. I've seen him in comics several times in Iron Fist. Of course, Iron Fist heavy into the martial arts, so it would make sense that they team up. I know in the recent Iron Fist comic, I know he kind of guest starred there too. So, again, another character I'm not too familiar with. And to be honest, that's where we're going, guys. They pulled out the big characters: Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor. They're going for the characters that even some of us that know comics don't know a lot about. I mean, and I've always said, look, I've read comics my whole life, mainly Marvel and DC. But for me, I have more interest than just comic books as far as like other television shows and sports and stuff like that. So there are people who know way more about the Marvel characters than I do, and DC characters. I consider myself a big geek, but I'm not the biggest geek. So the fact that I don't know much about Shang-Chi, I get maybe it's a flaw with me, but it just goes to show that I love a lot of the characters, but there are a lot of characters in the universe, and even I can't keep up with all of them. I lost my train of thought now. I don't know where I was going. Basically, what I'm trying to say, guys, is that I know these characters. I know the Marvel universe, but even I don't like all of it, so I'm not familiar with all of it. So Eternals, Shang-Chi are things that never really interested me, so I don't know a lot about. I think that's what I'm trying to summarize. Hopefully I summarized it right. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. Anyway, Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings. Now the Ten Rings, of course, the big crime organization, has been hinted about ever since the very first MCU film, the Iron Man, back with Obadiah Stane and kind of who he was dealing with as well. And then, of course, at the beginning of Phase 2, Iron Man 3, you had, what's his name? It's the great actor, blah, 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 blah. What is his name? Hold on. It's here somewhere. I'm thinking about it. Ben Kingsley. That's what it is. Ben Kingsley, imposter of the Mandarin, back in Iron Man 3. He turned out to be actor Trevor Slattery. Now, in one of the Marvel shorts, the actual Mandarin came for Trevor and, kind of said, hey, you impersonated me, so now you're in trouble. So we know the actual real Mandarin existed in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He's going to be in this one as Tony Leung. And then, of course, Shang-Chi, you have Simu Liu. I totally butchered those names. I know, guys. You know me. I can't say names, right? That's just my thing. So, anyway, the thing about this, too, of course, given the fact that it's an Asian character, we're getting a lot of Asian casting in this. Diversified, of course. That's great. That's what we want to see in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I like the fact that this film is getting made, of course. Give me some good kung fu action in this, and I'm down. So, Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings, set to come out, as I said, February 12th, 2021. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Holy crap, am I already at 20 minutes? Okay, I'm not even halfway through this. Definitely not going to get to anything else, guys. Sorry, not going to get anything except for Marvel today. I'll talk about the rest later. Okay, so next up, spring 2020, WandaVision. Of course, this is set after the events of Avengers Endgame. WandaVision makes you think we're dealing with, Scarlet Witch and Vision in this one. A couple things that we know. First off, of course, Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany are going to be in this. We also have another actress, Teyonah Parris, who joins the series as a grown-up Monica Rambeau. Now, that character actually comes from Captain Marvel. The little girl that was in Captain Marvel, that's her. That's her all grown up, of course. In the comics, she goes on to become kind of a Captain Marvel-esque type character with powers. I think Photon was her name at some point. She's got a different name now going. I know she got a couple of years ago, but again, not too familiar with the character. Just kind of, I've heard of her as well. So it's going to be interesting that she's going to be in this. Now, also, this series is going to lead into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which of course is the next film coming out in May 7th, 2021. Also, Elizabeth Olsen said, quote, "This will be the series where we understand Wanda Maximoff as Scarlet Witch." So, just to kind of play with that a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness mixed in with this. First off, putting Wanda and Doctor Strange together, I like it. Doctor Strange being the Sorcerer Supreme, dealing in the magic realm, and, Wanda's powers kind of being of that nature. Doctor Strange, I could see him being kind of a mentor to her, to accessing the full potential of her powers, because we really haven't seen the full potential of her powers yet. She's still growing. She grew with every film. She took on Thanos. She can do a hell of a lot more, let me tell you that, okay? So that's kind of nice. Obviously, I think she's going to be grieving with Vision, the loss of Vision, and how to deal with that. How that's going to come to play, I don't know. But, I'm going to be interested to see. But it also gives us an idea that, the series and the movies are definitely going to intermingle with each other. And you might have to watch this series to make sure you understand the films. What we've had so far in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, going back to, say, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or even, the Netflix stuff, which they said was part of the MCU, but is, you don't have to have watched this stuff. But with this, if you really want to fully understand Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, you're going to have to watch probably WandaVision. So that also leads me to believe that maybe these shows, Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Hawkeye, Loki, they might not be ones that get multiple seasons. They may be just, 6 or 7 episodes, an extended movie, so to speak, and then that's it, which honestly I like. More of a mini-series, that's great. You tell more story, get more in-depth in 7 hours, as opposed to the 2 to 3 hour window that you usually get. And I'm okay with that. If WandaVision turns out to be just 7 episodes or 7 hours of a story and that's all we get, that's great, because I know we're going to get more character development and more story than we would in a 2-hour film. So I'm totally okay with that. But bringing her into the Multiverse of Madness, that could mean a lot of things, honestly. I mean, first off, let's look at a multiverse, okay? They were hinting at it in Spider-Man Far From Home. And Jake Gyllenhaal's character Mysterio was allegedly supposed to be from Multiverse. Turns out he was lying. Big shocker there. But they're hinting more at the multiverse. Now, could this mean that maybe Wanda, in her grieving for Vision, wants to still find a way to bring him back by maybe an alternate dimension? I don't know. Maybe Wanda makes a little bit of a mess trying to bring Vision back, and Doctor Strange has to help fix it. I don't know. Exactly. I have no idea, but I'm not a big Doctor Strange guy, I've never been a big fan of him. Even the film I wasn't huge on, but the idea of putting these two characters together and what it could mean, I'm all for it. Sounds like a lot of fun, so I'm on board for that. As far as Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming out May 7, 2021, yeah, I'll skip it. The only thing, I am a little upset, with Doctor Strange, because Rachel McAdams, one of my favorite actresses, I feel like she was wasted in that film, much like a lot of the love interests were in some of the superhero films, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes too. But yeah, the fact that, they kind of wasted, I think she could be better, have a better role than what she was in Doctor Strange, than just a love interest for Benedict Cumberbatch. So, little bitter about Doctor Strange. But again, Doctor Strange teaming up with Wanda, let's do it. All right, so the next up, spring 2021, we have Loki on the Disney Plus network, and could be interesting, The only thing I hate about this is it deals with my problem with Endgame, is how they address time travel and how I feel like they just kind of set up their own rules to basically explain their plot holes, is what it is. And with this, Loki in Endgame, we saw him pick up the cube and then vanish, okay? So the events of, the second Thor film, the third, fourth film, pretty much going onward from the end of Avengers, supposed to be changed because Loki escaped, but they explain it as creating multiple realities, blah, 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 whatever. I'm just going to let it go for right now and know that Tom Hiddleston as Loki is great. We can all agree he's a great actor, great character, fun to watch. I think he's best when he's working with Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I think the two of them together have a great rapport. Their relationship as brothers is really, a highlight of the Thor films. So I'm a little iffy as far as if you have Loki without Thor. I don't know how he's going to work on his own. It's Tom Hiddleston. He's a great actor, so I'll give him a little bit of credit there. But again, not sure what's going to happen in this, but I'm all for it. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Now, next up after that, we have another series on the Disney Plus in summer 2021 with What If. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, this is actually a Marvel comic they used to do. Basically, what if such and such happened? Kind of like alternate realities, as what seems to be they might be dealing with pretty soon here in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the whole thing is going to be narrated by the Watcher. Yes, the Watcher, who is a big part of big events in the Marvel comics, of course. Going to be voiced by Jeffrey Wright, which I believe is the guy from Westworld, right? In which case, love it, love it, love it. We saw the Watchers a little bit in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as well, too, when had the Stan Lee cameo, which was a lot of fun. But also, we got a lot of the same, actors coming back to voice. They already said Michael B. Jordan, Josh Brolin, Mark Ruffalo, Tom Hiddleston, Haley Atwell, Chris Hemsworth, Paul Rudd. They're all coming back to voice their characters, which is great. I totally love that. Of course, sticking, within that theme. And the only main story we know as of right now is that the first one, or one of the first ones we're getting, is showcasing Peggy Carter, played by Haley Atwell, where basically she becomes Captain America by taking the super soldier serum, not Steve Rogers. That's pretty interesting in my case because, first off, I think Peggy Carter was the best love interest in that phase 1 of Marvel films, maybe even the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe, one of my favorite love interests. Agent Carter, of course, the ABC series. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was great, but I enjoyed it. And because of what she's done with this character, I got a little bit of crush on Haley Atwell. I'm not going to lie. I think she's pretty hot in my eyes. But anyway, this sounds like a great concept because Peggy Carter, of course, taking the super soldier serum, becoming Captain America. We're back in the 1940s dealing with World War I. What choices would she make different than what Steve did? But also the fact that, guess what? Of course, she's a woman back in the 40s. There's got to be some, little bit of a story there dealing with that whole thing. But the what ifs, it's animated, and I think it's going to be great. I'm solely excited to see these stories. I don't like, when they do this multiverse time travel stuff in the main storylines as much, but doing it as kind of one-offs or whatever, almost like Twilight Zone type episodes, I'm totally okay with that. So I'm interested in this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Play with a lot of stuff, be a lot of fun. I'm all for it. Let's get into it, guys. Okay, next up, we got another series, Fall 2020. Wow, we're getting 2-3 series in between films. Well, that's interesting. Anyway, Hawkeye, Fall 2021. Jeremy Renner is coming back. We're going to see a little bit as far as what he did with the Ronin character. And the main thing they said in this is Clinton Barton trains Kate Bishop to become a superhero without superpowers. So, when those two concepts alone seem interesting to me, first off, I want to know more, again, about what happened to Clint Barton between Infinity War and Endgame. I want to know, we saw him lose his family. I want to know from that moment to the moment where Natasha finds him beating up that Asian gang or whatever. I want to know about those moments. I want to see what kind of journey he's been on. I'm assuming this takes place after Endgame. Maybe in between. Maybe it's one of the things where we do see what I just talked about. And in that time, he did train a Kate Bishop. Kind of those things where, he's in a dark place and he ends up taking on a protege and he trains her before the events of Endgame. That's something I would love. Again, I just want to see between Infinity War and Endgame. I want to see that 5-year gap because there's so much you can do interesting character-wise with what these people have gone through, what the world has gone through. I want to see it. I want to see what Natasha's dealing with. I want to see what Clint's dealing with. I really want to see Bruce Banner. I want to see the event that turns him into Smart Hulk, I guess you would say. Whatever. I want to see that happen. Show it to me. Of course, we don't have anything on Hulk right now, Nothing to do with Mark Ruffalo and the Hulk as of right now has been announced, but I can see him popping up in a Black Widow. If the events take place between those 5 years, I can see him popping up in a Black Widow film or being mentioned or something along those lines. But anyway, yeah, Hawkeye, he's got a couple of good comic book storylines where Solo, but again, the thing about him is he's this hero, in a world full of gods, in a team full of Thors and Hulks and Iron Mans and Captain Americas. He's the most ordinary out of all of them, much like him and Natasha were. So, again, the quote was, learning to be a superhero without superpowers, I guess is what the quote was, right? Let me go back here. Superhero without superpowers. Yes, that was correct. Again, that phrase alone and knowing the Hawkeye character, there's some stuff you can do with that there. So again, it's the MCU, it's Jeremy Renner, he knows the character. total faith in what they're doing, so I will definitely give it to them there. Okay, the last two things on my agenda for the Marvel panel, and of course for this show, because I'm already out of time. Thor 4 was announced a couple days before Comic-Con. We got the announcement they're doing a Thor 4. They are having Taika Waititi come back to direct, who directed Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok. Honestly, I've watched the film in theaters, and I've watched it I think at least once or twice more since. I think it's a good film, or a pretty, enjoyable film, but I don't like it as a Thor film, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I always make the joke, to me it seemed like Flash Gordon Ragnarok, because it definitely had that feel of that campy space drama that was the Flash Gordon films. And to put Thor in that, he's always been more of a Shakespearean character to me, rather than a Flash Gordon type character. I mean, Kenneth Branagh, I think, nailed it. Kenneth Branagh nailed it in that first Thor film, which is why that Thor film is one of my favorite MCU films. So, Thor Ragnarok, enjoyable, yes. A good Thor movie, not in my opinion. But anyway, Waititi's coming back, and they got a name for the Thor film. It's going to be Love and Thunder. And with the title cards and, kind of what they're looking at, it looks very metal, I guess, is what the phrase people are going for, metal. And, of course, we got the return, they said, of Natalie Portman as Jane Foster. Not only that, but they also said she's, in fact, becoming that female Thor we saw in the Thor comics. Now, Natalie Portman as Jane Foster, one of the weaker love interests in the MCU. After that first Thor film, I think she kind of lost her interest to me. Even towards the end of that film, I think she lost a little bit of interest for me as well. It was funny when ENDGAME came around and they had that scene that took place during the second Thor film. I don't even remember what the second Thor film was called. But anyway, there was this shot of her, and I couldn't remember if that was a shot from the second Thor film they just took from, or if it had to be something new that Natalie Portman actually had to shot. Now I'm under the impression it might have been actually something new, because it looks like that her relationship with Marvel and the MCU has gotten better, because it was a little icy there for a while. They kind of wrote her off as the MCU went along, given maybe her disinterest with how her character was treated, or, maybe some of the things that she said. But in any event, she's back. She's going to be the Mighty Thor, is what, she was called in the comics. And I know some people have, not too thrilled about it because of how weak her character was thus far in the MCU. And to that I say, I'm psyched for this. I am psyched for this. Now, when Mighty Thor, which is what I'm going to call her, I'm not going to call her Lady Thor, first was announced in the comic books, I was kind of against it, okay? I'm against basically taking these characters that we know and giving them, different spins. Yes, you made Falcon Captain America, so you could have, an African-American Captain America. You took Jane Foster and made her, Thor, so you could have a female Thor to try to boost your comic sales. I totally get it. That's right. I totally get it. Not a problem. But what happened is that I started reading Mighty Thor, and I was, against the gimmick, so to speak. But the thing was, Jason Aaron, who is a great comic book writer, was writing it. And in doing so, he made a story that was so good to read. I was totally on board. Honestly, I've never been a big Thor guy. I've never read a lot of Thor comics, but I started reading Thor at that time just to check it out. And I've been keeping up with Thor ever since. I haven't always, been reading since then, but I've at least been keeping up of what's going on with Thor. Of course, you had the War of Realms that just happened with it too. But what they've done with the character of Jane Foster, and just to, maybe spoil a little of the storyline for you, just to let you know, basically what happened at the end of Original Sin was that Thor was no longer worthy to wield Mjolnir. And so it's sitting there on the moon. People are trying to lift it. Nobody can. And this figure comes up and picks up the Thor. And suddenly there's a female Thor running around. And of course, people are like, well, Thor is actually the name of Odin's son. Well, if you read the comics, the guy who was Thor actually went on to get a new name, Odin's son, because again, he was not worthy to call himself Thor, so he called himself Odin's son for a while. So how they're going to go with those names in the MCU, I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. Okay? But anyway, we come to find out later on that it was Jane Foster. And Jane Foster, actually, in the comics, got cancer. And in doing so, this makes her feel powerful, gives her a little bit of escape for what's happening in her real life. But also, being Thor is actually progressing the cancer even faster than what it was. So, she's out helping people, but again, it's killing her faster. Dealing with something like that is just a great storyline, of course. So, the price of being a hero and, dealing with those consequences. Natalie Portman is more equipped to deal with a storyline like that than what they have given Jane Foster in the past. So for that, I am super excited that if they give you some kind of storyline like that in Love and Thunder, I think it's going to be great. Now, I've always said too, Natalie Portman is a short, skinny girl, so that versus what, Mighty Thor looks like in the comic books, I don't know how they're going to do that, honestly. I think you might have to do a little He-Man there, maybe even get a different actress to play Mighty Thor, but I don't know. Anyway, some people are poo-pooing on it because of the way Jane Foster is in the MCU. I'm telling you to look at Mighty Thor in the comics and what her character becomes during this whole event and realize that there is enough material there to redeem this character and to make her good and to do this right and to give you a good storyline with her. So I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Again, I'm not a fan of, Taika Waititi and what he did with Thor Ragnarok. Let me take that back. I am a fan of Taika Waititi because I like What We Do in the Shadows, but I don't like Thor Ragnarok as a Thor film. Where he goes, I don't know. I think we're supposed to get Beta Ray Bill on this one too, from what I heard as well. But anyway, I like the Mighty Thor storyline. I like where they're going to go with it. I think they have the right talent behind it. Of course, how they craft it, it's all in the execution. It's always in the execution with any film. So let's see how they execute this one. All right, and that was kind of the end of their events or kind of what they had to announce for Phase 4, what's coming out within the next 2 years. That's fine. Some people think that maybe we'll get more about things that are in development at D23. I can see that, whatever. But at the very end, of course, Kevin Feige came out and announced Mahershala Ali as Blade. He put on his hat, said Blade on it. People went nuts. Great, awesome. Mahershala Ali, the leading Best Supporting Actor winner right now. This very reminiscent of how I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, Brie Larson was the current reigning Best Actress winner when she was announced as Captain Marvel. So now they have the current Best Supporting Actor come out as Blade. I mean, it's very reminiscent, very, very shadowy of that. But Mahershala Ali, great actor, and that's what Marvel Studios does great. They get great talent for these characters. It's the great thing about it. I mean, you get people like Robert Redford or people like Anthony Hopkins in these films. Cate Blanchett, I gotta say again, going back to Thor Ragnarok and my disappointment with it, I don't like how she was treated and how the actors could have done so much more with that character than what she did with the Ragnarok. But anyway, they know how to cast. They do it great. And we learned from this as well that Mahershala Ali actually came to Kevin Feige asking to play Blade. That story is a little dangerous in my opinion because now we see this thing where actors and actresses campaign for certain roles, and the fact that this story got out and that Mahershala Ali met with Kevin Feige and asked to play Blade might feed into more actors and actresses campaigning for roles, which I do not like to see. But in any event, it's got to be great. I mean, now Mahershala Ali, he is in his mid-40s, so to start playing an action hero at that point might be a little iffy, really. But, he's a good actor. So, Ben Affleck was in his mid-40s when he played Batman. And, he could go into his 50s and play him probably. So, whatever. The physicality of it, that all depends, again, on the execution of the production and the stunt team and all stuff like that. But Blade, people know the character. People like the character. It's interesting because, if you look at the first 3 Blade films, too, this is a guy that hunts vampires and cuts off their heads and definitely, lives in an edgier world than what we're used to in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So to put him in this, or going to put him in this at least, you got to think, is it going to be PG-13 or is it going to be R? Are we going to get an R-rated Marvel Cinematic film when really we know that the Marvel Cinematic Universe films are made for family films? You have stuff like the Netflix series and stuff like that are a little more edgier, and that's where I thought Blade would end up, honestly, on a series where something, again, you can play a little more edge to him and definitely show the violence of what world he lives in. So that's kind of my big question, I guess, is what kind of storyline they're going to go for. And you can get away with a lot in a PG-13 film. Definitely, you can have all the violence in the world, and the fact that in the previous Blade films, when he cuts them up, they disintegrate. So as long as you don't show a bunch of blood, you're okay there. Of course, nudity is always a thing that puts you in R, but you could kill people all day long, like you've seen in the MCU, and get away with it. So there are ways around it. I'm not saying I want to see an R rating, because I'm not that type of person that'd be like, oh, it's going to be R, it's going to be good. That's not what it's about. It's about crafting a good story and good execution to make a good film, whether it's PG-13 or R. If it makes sense for the character, that's really what I want to see. So, but that's kind of was the big pop. I'm excited about that. I don't think we're getting it anytime soon because it was announced, but it's not in Phase 4. I think it's going to be Phase 5 or maybe even Phase 6 before we see it, in which case Mahershala Ali is going to be even older, but I'm not going to get into too much into that. But anyway, guys, that is Marvel Studios Hall H 2019. It was good, a lot of the stuff they announced or stuff we knew was already in production. What they did when they gave us a slate, they gave us, the big news about, Natalie Portman coming back, and they gave us Mahershala Ali as Blade. Those are, I think, the 3 main things, or the 3 good things we can take away from this panel. Everything else is, in there, but here we go again. Marvel Studios Phase 4, the phases really don't mean anything in my opinion at this point, but they're still alive, they're still kicking strong, and the ones that are doing it great, Warner Brothers, your move, because man, you're getting your asses handed to you. You are certainly getting your asses handed to you. But anyway, guys, time for you to fire back, of course. I know I went on for a very long time, much longer than I do about anything. I'm at 46 minutes according to my count, so sorry if you stuck with me this long. I do appreciate it for me yammering on about this stuff, but hopefully made it to the end. Let me know what you're excited about. Hit me up, Facebook group, Twitter account, Dayspring Discussions at gmail.com. How do you feel about this slate? What do you feel negatively and positively about this panel? And of course, I'm going to be back in a couple days, guys, because of course there's a lot more stuff about Comic-Con to talk about. Given the fact the MCU is really big right now and how much I enjoy it, I knew I was going to talk for a long time about this, but I'll talk about all the other Comic-Con stuff later on. That's kind of the good thing too about the week after Comic-Con, is the fact that you don't get a lot of news posted because so much came out at Comic-Con. So, for a person who does a show like me, it gives me more time to drudge through all the news that we got. But that's it. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, SlimDayspring12. And of course, if you have enjoyed this show or any other shows that I have done, head on over to my Patreon page and donate $1. As I say, I do this show with a $20 microphone and an 8-year-old computer, so obviously I'm not doing high tech here. And the fact that this is something I do in my spare time and is at the bottom of my to-do list in my life means I can't always get to it. But by donating a little bit of money, of course, just $1 a month gives me more motivation to do more shows, to do better shows. And if enough people donate, of course, I might be able to get some better equipment, which, of course, hopefully will equal a better show. But if you don't want to, that's fine. Just enjoy the show and let's talk. Fire back on the social media groups, Gmail account, discuss. I like to talk about this stuff. That's why I like to do this show. And of course, I love discussing it. So let's do that, guys. That's it. Go out, enjoy your week, of course. And if you have anything else, you know where to find me. Until next time, may the force be with us all.